So why is it that this title means anything to anyone? How to stop standing in your own way? What does it even mean, right? It shouldn't mean anything. It should be just a simple play of words. But you realize exactly, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because you are doing it as well. It's not only me, right? I want to talk about it because this is, in my opinion, the biggest obstacle for every single person in this world in pursuit of their own goals and of their own dreams, ultimately, right? So, how to stop standing in your own way? By realizing that you are already there, that this destination that you're trying to pursue all the time is never going to fulfill you to the point of actually, you know, getting to a place of ultimate satisfaction and fulfillment from where you never want to start running away from. Um, it's a beautiful paradox, and paradoxes don't sell, unfortunately. So that's why don't not a lot of people are talking about them. But we are living paradoxes every single day, all the time, and we are trying to do the best to navigate them, right? And this is a frustrating one. This kind of struggle, for the lack of a better word, this kind of need to postpone happiness for a future moment in time, which supposedly should complete us or give us more than what we are currently living or having, this is the source of unhappiness. And I'm not saying this purely from theory. I reverse engineered this kind of unhappiness and unsatisfactoriness formula, if you want, from my own existence and from my own actions in the real life. And I'm an engineer, and I need to understand why things are working as they are working for me as a human being. And then try to verbalize them, try to understand them in a way that's operational, right? In a way that can help me actually live my life different than this kind of default setup that I came in this world with, right? Because I'm not special from that point of view, unfortunately, meaning that everyone is struggling with this, right? Everyone is postponing, especially today in this society, especially if you are a high achiever and you have aspirations, right? You have a professional growth to aspire to, you have kids to support in your day-to-day life. You are just not sitting around. Basically, you want to really do something with your life, right? You want to inspire others, you want to grow yourself, you want to grow others through your own or from your own experience and so on. And this never-ending aspiration to always develop yourself is the source of unhappiness, because by design what we are trading for this is the actual the simple moments of recognition of our own progress along the way. Those simple moments of internal reflection, those special milestones, if you want, where we realize what we've achieved, and we also enforce the fact that we will never arrive in a place where everything will be achieved, right, by ourselves. There is nothing that can give us full completion and and permanent satisfaction, if you want. So what's the antidote to this? What's the alternative to this mad pursuit, if you want, towards a destination that is by default ill-designed? Because there is nothing there, you cannot define it in a very concrete way, right? And I came up with this concept that helps me a lot, which I call a peaceful ambition, right? The kind of ambition which doesn't rob you of your intrinsic desire to grow and become someone better and more, but at the same time honors in priority what you've achieved up to that point, and always builds on top of this really strong foundation that you've created along the way up to that point, right? Up to this very moment. And this concept of peaceful ambition is a very good integration of these two variables, if you want, or these two ways of being, right? So as human beings, we have two modes of operating in the world, in my opinion. Operating, right? I'm using words here, and sometimes words can be a source of confusion, unfortunately, but I'll try to make an important point. A human being, for me, has two modes of operating, right? You have the human who is responsible for the doing in the world, for the actual interaction with the physical world, for the thinking, for the action itself, right? You are doing stuff, and we are living in that world. We are imprisoned by that world, right? Which is both external and internal, but ultimately everything is internal, right? That internal world of doing things, of thinking in our own mind all the time, and engaging with the world, and communicating with people about stuff that we are thinking about and we are doing, and the world that is seen and executed upon, right? This kind of the world is what we are all very good at, right? The human. But there is this this second part in our nature called the being, right? The human being. So this being thing is not really concerned with doing anything, right? You cannot do the being. So that's a source of confusion in itself, right? By simply talking about it, because you want to grasp the being, you want to understand what can you do with it, right? Why is this human being important? Why is the being thing important? Why should I care about it? Well, the mind or the source who generated that thought, why should I care about this, is not really interested in the concept of a being, in its entirety. So the mind doesn't care about being, the mind cares about doing. So who is the being, and why should we care about the being? Well, the being ultimately is what you care the most about, because the being is who you really are, and who you really are cannot be really articulated with words, with descriptive language that the mind can produce. The being that you are, not the being that you are doing, the being that you are in this moment is something, right, that cannot be filled with doing, right? And in doing, I also count thinking. Thinking about being is useless. There is no substitute for being than being. So this paradox that we are also living is trying to wrestle with this concept, right? What should I do? And the more you grow, the more you age, right? After a certain threshold, I would say 30, 35, 40, depends on the kind of life crisis that you have along the way. For me, it hit me around 30 because I had a life crisis. I lost my mother 2 years ago, and before that I had to grow. I had to go through my own, how can I say, my own rebirth, ultimately, right? It took me 4 years to process what is happening and the kind of disruption that I'm going to face at some point when she will be gone and so on. So that kind of challenge already hit me, early in my life, I would say. But if you don't have this kind of personal challenge or crisis to force you to recalibrate yourself in terms of what's important to you in your life, it will hit you later on, right? When the doing in your life becomes less and less important and less fulfilling. When the being, meaning who am I? Why am I doing what I'm doing? What's the purpose of everything? What's my goal in this life? Why do I care about anything, right? And this is when people have their midlife crisis, right? Where when they hit this kind of wall of impenetrable, unsatisfactoriness. So up to a certain age, you're just dealing with it. You're saying, okay, if I only get this amount of money, if I only get to this position, if I only can achieve this, and if I only can get that, then I'm happy, then I'm fulfilled, then everything is nice, then, I'm okay. And most people do it like that. Most people become successful. Most people get whatever they want. And then they realize, in a way that cannot be unrealized, let's put it like that, that this is not a recipe for real happiness, for the kind of happiness that they are implicitly pursuing, right? But they don't know any better than that. They don't know how to do anything different. They don't know that there is this possibility of pursuing your own goals in a peaceful way. They are desperate to achieve their next big milestone, hoping that that thing will offload the pressure that they are currently feeling to feel happiness, to find happiness, to get to happiness, right? And those stakes become higher and higher because now you are older and you don't have so much time until you get to happiness. So now you have to have bigger goals because, of course, all the goals that you achieved up to that point proved to be insufficient. So you can actually feel happy about yourself, right? So now, because this is the only game that you know how to play, you don't have time to think about the being stupid thing. What is this being? I don't care about it, right? I want to do more. I want to do more and more and more because clearly I'm not doing enough, because this is why I'm not happy, right? I'm not doing enough. So I need to do more and do more and do more. And then and maybe, keep it like this until you are 50 or 60 or 70, and being miserable along the way, of course, because we all know that this will not end, right, anytime soon, and you will never get to actually being happy with yourself by going in this pursuit. And very likely you will end this life on this planet, not daring, not having the courage to actually reflect on what you really wanted in life, which is beyond anything that you could have ever achieved, beyond any kind of wealth accumulation or grandiose possessions that you could have had. This thing of a peaceful life, of everyday fulfillment, of simple joy that you always knew is important and you unfortunately couldn't find a way to get it or allow yourself the gift of having it. This is what will ruin your last phase in life. Because you will not accept ever, while, after a life of struggling and discounting the value of your years for better years in the future, you will not allow yourself the chance to actually acknowledge for yourself and be truthful to yourself that you always had the possibility of enjoying your life during that pursuit, during that mad pursuit. Right? So this is what I want to fight against in a way, but I don't like the word fight ultimately because it means that I resist something. I don't fight anything. This concept of a peaceful ambition is, for me, the only reasonable way in which you can continue to be ambitious and achieve goals and do whatever you think you're capable of doing, but honor what you have in front of you before anything. Honor your journey and everything you are building along the way in priority. Because otherwise is like building on moving sand, right? If you're not honoring what you are facing and what you are building in real time, you are like skipping always this kind of foundation, right? That you can leverage instead. You are running away from something in the hope of finding something better in the future. And it's fascinating for me that the more intelligent you are, the better you can convince yourself that this is a good strategy. People who don't overthink, people who are simple, people who are more in contact with nature, with life, they realize this kind of simple truth much faster because they are not obsessed with possessions. They are not obsessed with their own careers. They are not obsessed with external rewards and external metrics of success. And they realize that the purpose of it, if you want, is to just be there fully. And we have no idea how to be, right? The world we live in enforces and rewards doing things, not being. Being is boring. Being is not a topic of discussion for a business gathering. You know, at a dinner cocktail, what can you talk about that? How can you talk about being? Those kind of philosophical discussions are not interesting to anyone. Why should you care about them, right? How they are producing money? What can I do with this? So there is no mystery why this didn't caught up to this point, right? Why these kind of topics are not top of mind for everyone. They are important to everyone, but no one is talking about them because you cannot talk about them ultimately. What I'm doing here is a disservice, right, to you ultimately, because I am trying to put words on something that you ultimately have to experience for yourself. At the same time, I feel this urge to communicate the things that I have in mind, knowing that it might help someone, and the words themselves point to something deeper, right? This is what I loved when Eckhart Tolle said, right, that words are pointers beyond themselves. Words, when talking about being and life and spirituality, or this kind of non-tangible topics, words words are mostly doing a disservice. So how can you then communicate this kind of things with other people? How can you help? How can you do service? In truth, I'm not doing this in order to help any other person than myself. And I've said this, I think, along the way, that I'm doing this mostly because I need it. This kind of this kind of videos, they help me more than anyone else, I'm sure. So for this reason, I know that it's more of an egoistic act. At the same time, I know that they also have the capability to inspire and help others see that there is no shame in reflecting on your journey along the way and acknowledging what you've achieved and becoming your best friend and developing this kind of relationship with yourself. Because in this pursuit, whatever pursuit you are going to to be in your life, you are always accompanied by your mind, right? You always have thoughts that guide your direction and help you take action along the way. And if those thoughts come from a mind who is attuned to your deepest desires and your is calibrated around your inner voice, around your soul. Again, we are using words here, we are using metaphors that ultimately don't translate to something tangible, but you know what I'm pointing at. If your mind becomes your best ally because you nurture for it and you give yourself this kind of precious gift of loving yourself, of appreciating your efforts every single day, of being graceful to yourself and grateful for everything you've accomplished, if you give yourself this kind of nourishing as you go along, you will feel less and less tense. You will feel less and less in a rush. You will feel that you're accomplishing more by doing less and being more. You will have to do this in a way that gives you some sort of experiential feedback, because just by listening to me, you will never get there, right? In a way. So how can you start? How can you get out of your own way? Well, the simplest way that I found is to already decide, even for a minute, internally, for yourself, that you already achieved what you wanted, that you already arrived, that this is it, you are complete now. And see how it feels. If it were, hypothetically, right, just to ease your mind, right, not to keep your mind engaged, because your mind now jumps on me and says, it cannot be, I'm not complete, I have all these problems, you cannot tell me to feel complete. But hypothetically, right, it's an exercise in imagination. Just let's assume that for this minute, 1 minute, just clock it, you achieved everything. All your problems are solved. Everything is already done. Done deal. Everything is amazing. Everything is exactly as you want. How does it feel? Just realize that everything you could have ever imagined to achieve, dream of achieving, is already there. It's done. How does it feel? Is there more things that you still need to achieve? Is this something that your mind still cannot accept as being the ultimate payoff for its needs? Or is there something beneath that? Just do this exercise and see this tendency of your mind to never accept anything, and realize that this is then a rigged game. And you can never satisfy your mind like that by achieving more. So you have to find a different way of being. You have to define for yourself what a life of peaceful ambition means, and how can you live such a life. How can you honor what you're living in this very moment first, and then build on top of that. And this order is important. You cannot have it the other way around. Good luck.